I'm excited about this episode because we are going to go over everything that I do for someone that has shoulder issues from an exercise standpoint. The shoulder joint itself is one of those things that tends to flare up a lot, especially now. And you know, if your shoulder doesn't act like a shoulder, then it won't be able to do shoulder things, right? Like, you know, an overhead press is an awesome exercise, but if your shoulder joint doesn't work like it's supposed to, then how the hell are you supposed to do this without any kind of compensation? The big thing that people need to understand is that the shoulder joint, I would categorize it in like 3 parts. So you have like your glenohumeral joint, like the ball and socket joint. Then you have your scapula, and then I would also categorize like your collarbone, like this stuff that connects all to it. Those are like 3 parts that allows your shoulder to do all these awesome things for movement. And when those 3 things don't move or are stuck or have had an injury, it prevents the whole shoulder joint to kind of work as this one beautiful symphony thing, and things hurt. I would probably start off by saying that primarily what we see, at least in my experience, in my clinical experience, and in the gym, a lot of people get anterior shoulder pain, like right in the frickin' front. And that's due to a couple things. The most major one and the easiest one to kind of categorize is our posture, especially now. Like, fuck, the amount of Zoom calls I do every week that makes me sit in front of my laptop fucking sucks. Like, I'm like this all day. And when I get chiropractic treatment, like, fuck, things pop, crack, snap, like, it's crazy. And I move daily, right? So I can only imagine how a regular person feels when they're in front of their computer like 12 hours every single day, Monday to Friday. And then Saturday, Sunday, they're just like, fuck, I don't want to do anything. So that being said, our posture, if you look from the side view, if we're here, we tend to be here all day. Then people get tight and then they go into the gym like this and they try to do stuff. With that being said, if we have this prolonged posture, our nervous system kind of takes over and puts us into that position because it understands that, oh, you've always been in this rounded, hunched position, so I'm going to make you more efficient in that so you don't have to create or consume, but produce energy to get you there. So I'm going to keep you there to make it more efficient. But when it comes to movement, our shoulder joint does not like being like this, like being this in this big rounded position. It likes to be centered. It likes to be here, if you think about it. And that allows you to do stuff overhead and out to the side and back behind and do this kind of stuff without any kind of compensation. Like, look at the rest of my body when I do this. Like, there's no movement. This is purely glenohumeral axial rotation. Nothing else is compensating, because I work on my shoulder mobility every single day. So when people come to my clinic, to the gym, online, because they've seen my work through Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is, the majority of them will have anterior shoulder pain. And there's lots of different ways to attack this. And I want to share kind of like my thought process, what I get the person working towards, and I'm gonna kind of give you the guidelines of what you should be doing in your own program, what you should be avoiding, and going from there. So like, number 1, and this like blows my mind, that every time, like, I can get like an acute like and chronic shoulder with anterior shoulder pain non-stop year after year, and then I ask the person, what do you do in the gym? They're like, oh, military press, chin-ups, split jerks, overhead snatch, and I'm like, no, please, no. Right? So that's number 1. Like, stay away from anything overhead for at least like 2-3 months. Guaranteed. If you just did that one thing, shit is gonna feel a lot better. Because if you think about those 3 things, glenohumeral joint, your scap, and all this stuff here, your collarbone, if they all work together in unison, then doing this stuff is going to be easy. But if one thing is not moving the way it should, then those other two things are not gonna do their job either. So now you're getting sheer force and stress into places that don't belong, and then you got an owie. So that's my first step, is like eliminate the pain factor. Like that's the easiest thing. Like if someone hurt their lower back and they know how they injured it by bending over in a rounded position to go pick up their kid, they're gonna try to not do that again, right? It's like common sense, like, oh, I hurt my back trying to bend over and grab something, I'm not gonna try to do that again. But for some reason, when it comes to his shoulders, it's like, yeah, every time I press, I get sore the next day. All right, I'm gonna go back to the gym and press overhead again. Like, makes no sense to me, right? So number one, eliminate all overhead pressing. But if I had someone who was like, I really wanna press, like, that's all I care about in the gym, you gotta meet your patient client halfway. So there's really simple tricks that go a long way. Like I tell this to every patient I work with, like it's a small change that gives you like long-lasting dividends for joint health. So for the shoulder, if a person's like, no, I gotta fucking press, like fucking pressing is my thing, I'm like, sure. So say they're a big bench presser. An easy thing to do is just start doing floor presses. Like you can literally do a barbell floor press. You just have to have the rig set up low enough where you can like literally unrack it and then come down to the ground where the elbows touch. So by limiting that range of motion allows you to keep the shoulder joint a little bit more of a neutral position. So if you look at me from the side, say I'm in a bench press position and I'm coming down as past my pecs, like you can already see, as I get past a certain point, like as my elbows are past my shoulder, this shoulder pops forward, right? I get to a certain point where this is gonna happen if I go all the way low where the barbell touches my chest. That shoulder's gonna pop forward. And what is gonna bug anterior shoulder pain? Putting it into a more of an anterior tilt. Duh, right? So a simple thing is like, okay, well, let's do a floor press. My elbows are gonna stop here. How does my shoulder look? Fine, it's not spilling forward like I would if I went down to my chest with the barbell. But those people that are pressing tend to look like this. Say the average gym goer who's not a gym rat, but goes like 2 to 3 times a week, sits at a desk all day, they're gonna look like this, most likely, right? Shoulders forward. Now, with that shoulder forward position and I'm trying to do bench press, look how faster my shoulder pops forward. And then if I'm going all the way down, like this doesn't feel good on me, right? That is going to trigger more shit. So it's just finding that depth. And then the other one that I always use is something called the landmine press. So if you take a barbell, a standard 45-pound Olympic barbell, place it into a corner, or if you have a squat rack that has the attachment to slide it in, and now you press on a 45-degree angle, it's not gonna hurt the shoulder. 9 out of 10 times, people are surprised that it doesn't bug them. Like I literally have a client that broke their humerus, and I gave him a landmine press. They were worried about it. They did 12 reps with just the barbell, and they were like, oh, that did not hurt. It's like, yeah, it just puts the shoulder in a better neutral position. And then the fact that I'm pressing single arm, when I get to my end range, my scap now has to stabilize and keep this from falling all over the place, right? So a lot of these exercises are small little tweaks, and you can still train. Like I've literally had people with like a rotator cuff tear, a grade 2 tear, and they still need to exercise. Like these are the things that help, right? But again, everyone's anatomy is a little bit different. Everyone's issue is a little bit different. So maybe as you're listening to this, watching this, you're like, oh, fuck yeah, I'm gonna go to the gym after I watch this, I'm gonna try these 2 things, and they don't fucking work, and you're like, well, fuck you, Raph, like, you don't know shit. But everyone has a different shoulder, right? And the other thing too is like, people know that pulling is a good thing for your shoulders. People understand that. People that have like taken the time to read blogs, watch videos like this, they understand that your push-pull ratio should be like a 2-to-1 at least. And for those who don't understand, what I'm saying is that every time you do a pressing exercise, you should be doing a pulling exercise to counterbalance all the tension and stress you're placing on the musculature that allows you to do this. All right, so things like TRX rows, band pull aparts, face pulls, dumbbell rows, cable row, like any rowing motion is going to help your shoulder. The more you can pull, the more your shoulder is going to fall into a more neutral position and it's going to stay there, right? I don't know how long it takes. Fuck, I have no clue. But guaranteed, if you, like I said earlier, eliminate all pressing overhead and any exercise overhead for 3 months, and then added a shit ton of pulling, like whatever a client is doing right now, or you listening right now with shoulder pain, you eliminate like 80% of your pressing and just put in pulling, guaranteed in 3 months, like you'll be like, oh my God, my shoulder is fixed. Guaranteed. But a lot of people don't go down that path and take the time to do that. Another thing that people tend to forget, when I say no overhead pressing or overhead exercises, they'll still do like close grip pull down, lat pull down, fucking chin ups. That's still putting the shoulder in a place that should not be there if you have anterior shoulder pain. Because most of the time those people have overhead mobility like this, and now they're gonna grab a bar up top to do a chin up, and this is what's gonna look like. You're like feeding the dumpster fire of a shitty shoulder. So those are the things that people tend to forget. Fourth strategy is to actually get more mobility and stability in that shoulder. So the 2 mobility exercises that I do with fucking everyone and their mom should be doing these 2 exercises. Number 1, shoulder cars. If your shoulder cannot do this without any kind of compensation, like if you look at my body, like this is purely just my glenohumeral joint in conjunction with my scapula, in conjunction with my collarbone, working all harmoniously to produce that motion. Every patient, every client that I've worked with, where I give them shoulder cars, it does not look like that. And it should. And it takes time. The compensations that I usually see is as people come up top, their elbow breaks, their wrist does a weird thing, and then as they try to go into abduction, the trap pops up, and then they don't really know how to actually rotate, go into internal rotation, and they lean away from the tightness and the pain, and then they kind of do this weird thing. Like, if I see that all the time, and I'm like, well, no shit that when you take a dumbbell and try to press it overhead, if your shoulder can't do its like bare essentials in space and time, you have no business in pressing overhead, or maybe even pressing in general, depending on how bad that shoulder is, right? So when I get someone doing shoulder cars every fucking day, and so honestly, the more the better, right? Like, your joints feed off movement. The more you move, like motion is lotion. Like, I love that saying. Because every time you move that shoulder joint, I'm adding synovial fluid and all these different nutrients and blood flow to the area to help support and build the integrity of the joint. So now we're building that good foundation. So like every freaking day, as much as possible, you want to do shoulder cars. Number 2, scapular cars. People have no idea how to move their shoulder blades interdependently from everyone else. Everything else, sorry, not everyone else. So I like you can do them standing, but I feel like in a quadruped position, so imagine yourself on your hands and knees, so don't worry about my lower body, but my hands are on the ground, and like 1 scapular push-ups, right? Retraction, protraction, retraction, protraction. Pretty simple. But even then, I've seen people not able to like retract because they end up like arching their lower back and they think they're doing like cat-cow from yoga, but that doesn't really do anything. The compensation is happening at their lumbar spine, like a lot of things do, to make up for range of motion in your shoulder blade. And then I also see people bending at the elbows and their wrists hurt, and I'm like, fuck, we have a lot of work to do. And then on top of that, I'm like, okay, after we've done our retraction, protraction with our shoulder blades, now we're gonna go into scapular circles in one direction and then the other direction. 99% of the time when I get a person to do that, they can't. The brain doesn't even know how to comprehend that movement pattern. And I'm like, if your shoulder blade can't move freely when asked to, How is it supposed to move when you're placing a dumbbell over your head? It's not. If that shoulder blade behind you doesn't do these things, right, it won't move, then how's this glenohumeral joint supposed to communicate with that shoulder blade to produce a movement? It won't do it so well. It's going to compensate, and that's where a lot of people get pain. So those two mobility exercises, if I can get a shoulder moving the way it should, shit fixes itself really fast. And then imagine if I was doing those two exercises every single day, multiple times a day, eliminated overhead pressing, adjusted my pressing with the landmine and a floor press, and then on top of that, eliminated any kind of pulling exercise overhead. And then also on top of that, did a lot more rowing, face pulls, and all that kind of sweet stuff to get that shoulder moving and grooving. Like, your shoulder's fixed. Like, I've literally had patients and clients go to a physio, get a bunch of treatment done, but they don't add that next step of exercise, and they just like rely on getting needled, manual therapy and things like that, but they don't make true change. They come to me and then we start working together for 3 months and they're like, shoulder doesn't hurt. I'm like, who would have thought that doing specific exercises based on your anatomy would be a good thing? Shit, right? 2 more things that I want to throw in, or maybe 2 more exercises, I don't know yet. Stability. Our shoulder blade needs to be mobile to be able to move, but in order to produce those movements, it needs to be stable. So a lot of times I think a lot of people forget that the shoulder blade needs to be able to learn how to stabilize. So I, like, regardless if someone has shoulder pain or not, I have everyone doing farmer carries. So if I had 2 kettlebells in my hand and I placed them by my side and they were heavy enough that if I fell into this position, it would not feel good. So what's my natural response is to be upright in a more centrated position. And if you remember from my previous episodes, that joint centration is safety. Stability is safety for the joint. When I do heavy carries for somebody in their program, their shoulder sets itself. It will stabilize, and I'm also working my rotator cuff muscle specifically to stabilize that shoulder joint. And what does this position look like? A hell of a lot better position than being here all day. So it's like a postural self-correcting exercise where you actually can place heavy weight on a injured shoulder and a person's gonna go like, oh shit, I didn't think that this was not going to hurt. Because I've had patients like that where I can see it in their eye. Like, I will hand them a 10-kilo kettlebell and they're like, oh, I don't know, that's too heavy. And I'm like, fucking squeeze that handle, break that thing, and walk for me. And then they're like, oh, like, it doesn't feel that heavy at all. I'm like, no, because you're putting your shoulder in a better position. Now the last things, kettlebell armbar and Turkish get up. I'm gonna throw those 2 in. But if I wanted to have like a complete like stability based shoulder program, then a farmer carry is going to, not a farmer carry, sorry, an armbar, kettlebell armbar is going to do a lot of good stuff. And it also places that shoulder in a neutral position, a centrated position. You're working all those small little intricate muscles that support the shoulder to learn how to stabilize in this position, right? So kind of, I'm gonna try to wrap all this up. So if I took someone with acute and chronic shoulder pain, and I eliminated overhead pressing, eliminated any overhead exercise, gave them a shit ton of pulling exercises that are horizontal, not vertical, did some pressing with the landmine and a floor press, did a shit ton of shoulder cars and scapular cars, and then did stability exercises for the shoulder specifically, like any kind of carry variation and the kettlebell armbar, guaranteed in 3 months. Like, you can hold me accountable to it, but you need to be consistent on doing all those 6 things. I can't remember how many I put up with my hands. Guaranteed shoulder pain would go away. Guaranteed, from an exercise and movement standpoint. The biggest challenge is doing the work. And that goes for everything, right? Everything that's worth it in life is going to take time. It's going to take hard work, right? But if you put in the work, like, even if you did the minimum of like doing all the stuff that I said, like 2 days a week, because those are the 2 days you work out, you still are going to feel better, right? Adding more fuel to the fire of doing all the stuff opposite of what I just brought is just going to give you more of a headache, and it's going to make things worse, right? And again, thank you for listening or watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, hit the subscribe button, because I post new stuff all the time. If you're listening, again, go on my YouTube page and subscribe. Like, thank you guys for actually listening, because like almost every week I get a couple more people subscribing, so you guys are listening. Thank you so much. So thank you guys. Spread the message, spread the love. I'm going to continue giving you the best fitness and health advice out there. Until next time, you guys, we'll see you around.